Hello there! Here we go again with another monthly movie mash. This time we're going to take a look at what else I saw in June. Gonna give you a little forewarning here that this month was kind of wah-wah. Not a lot of movies, and some of the movies I did see I'm a little shaky on. Case in point, movie number 1 is 1943's We Dive at Dawn, which I feel like I can't even legitimately count because I dozed through the whole middle chunk. It's a British sub-movie about a group of men, with John Mills as their CO, about to get a 7-day leave and getting called back to go after a German ship. It was not a bad movie, really, although it had a pretty rough start. Slow going, poor quality, thick dialects that are hard to understand, stereotypical characters. But it did seem to have an interesting third act, which I was awake for most of it, where one of the sailors uses a German's uniform to sneak into Denmark, and the sailors and the Nazis have a big shootout on land, which is unusual for a sub-movie. Movie number 2 is one that I felt I'd already watched in a way because there are so many clips and compilation videos on YouTube, and I've seen some of those. 1985's Clue, which is a popular, quotable comedy based on the classic Parker Brothers board game. I always liked Clue, which figures, I've always enjoyed mysteries. I read all the Clue books, yeah, there were books, and loved the game, although my family would probably tell you I wasn't any good at it. I was always too distracted by the cool characters and the board with the rooms and the secret passageways and the neat game pieces and the conspiratorial sharing of clues among players to actually stay focused on, winning. Anyway, I'd never officially seen this movie until last month. It's a tongue-in-cheek film that somehow still manages to have a convincing, mysterious atmosphere. It's loaded with jokes and familiar faces, a strong dose of innuendo, and 3 different endings. What was my favorite gag? Maybe when Wadsworth the butler, played by Tim Curry, wanders into a room in the dark and thinks he's found a hidden door and turns on the shower. Or maybe the 1 + 2 + 2 + 1 exchange, where Leslie Ann Warren finally yells, "Shut up!" Oh, and the Madeline Kahn flames on the side of my face bit is pretty classic too. Movie number 3 is one that I'm sure at least part of my audience is very familiar with, 2017's Logan. This is an X-Men movie. In full disclosure, I haven't seen an X-Men movie in 12 years, and I only saw the first 3, so infer what you will from that. But a good movie's a good movie, and I heard so much praise for this one all around that I didn't want to be out of the loop anymore. Having finally seen it, I do feel that the praise was merited, although naturally I would have felt more invested if this was a franchise I was a big fan of. It's a heavy, surprisingly emotional movie with very good performances from its relatively small group of principals, and I think everyone agrees it's Hugh Jackman's best turn as Wolverine. Personally, this is a very subjective thing. There was a little too much R-rated content for my liking, like they went overboard just because they were allowed to. I watch a lot of war movies, but I really don't like slashing and stabbing and slicing, and, well, it's a movie about Wolverine, so there's a lot of that. Still, it was a good film with an engrossing story, even if you know diddly squat about the X-Men, and it's a solid note for the X-Men franchise to end on. Oh wait. Movie number 4 is a mystery romance from 2004 called Wicker Park, with Josh Hartnett, Diane Kruger, and Rose Byrne, in which Hartnett stars as a guy who's about to propose to his girlfriend when he thinks he sees a girl from his past and becomes obsessed with finding her. The ensuing mystery is told in a backwards-forwards progression, which manages to be not confusing, but satisfying, as each bit of information leads closer to the truth and everything gradually falls into place. It's also one of those movies where halfway through you get a huge perspective shift, and it's like, what? Initially, this did not look like a movie I would be interested in. It looked kind of like a Lifetime movie, but I was browsing stuff on Prime and said, I'll preview the first few minutes to see how it is, and I ended up watching the whole thing, and it definitely didn't turn out to be what I'd originally expected. With movie number 5, we go back to World War II. A lot of you are aware, I'm sure, that last month was the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Maybe some people revisited famous D-Day movies like Saving Private Ryan or The Longest Day. I brought home this much lesser-known D-Day movie from 1950 called Breakthrough. I actually didn't even know it was going to revolve around D-Day and what comes after, but sure enough, we storm Omaha Beach at the end of the first act. This was a pretty good infantry movie, with likable characters, likable leads, Frank Lovejoy as the experienced sergeant trying to help the Greenhorn lieutenant, played by John Agar, who's replaced the well-loved company leader who got promoted. The story focuses on the slow frustrations of the war immediately after the invasion, as the company makes it past the beach only to have to survive numerous German attacks as they make their way through France one hedgerow at a time. But there are also butting heads and disagreements over how emotionally involved a leader should get with his men. All of this was satisfyingly done, with some very good filming as well. Pretty darn good for a D-Day movie I feel like nobody's ever heard of, that's been far overshadowed by later, bigger budget films. Movie number 6 was Moontide, a film from 1942. I thought it was a crime drama suspense film, but it was really more of a love story with a dark dramatic twist. Jean Gabin stars as a shiftless dock worker who has kind of a strange relationship with his friend Tiny, played by Thomas Mitchell, but who finds his life taking a different direction after he prevents a young woman from drowning herself. The young woman is played by Ada Lupino, who gives a solid performance. Gabin's French accent was a little difficult to understand at times, but he was also good, playing the lovable rogue type, though I confess I only found him likable after a certain point. The film's main draw for me was that it features supporting performances from two of my favorite character actors, Thomas Mitchell and Claude Rains. Rains's character especially was a treat. It's a good story of the bad boy redeemed, with some spooky twists, a little humor, and plenty of foggy nights and crashing waves. Movie number 7 is a skating movie I've been wanting to see for a few years. I finally got around to it. The Cutting Edge from 1992. D.B. Sweeney and Moira Kelly play the leads in this movie about a hockey player who lost his shot at a professional league after an accident at the Olympics left him with peripheral blindness, who gets paired up with a figure skater known for being temperamental and extremely difficult to work with, who lost her shot at a gold medal at the same Olympics. It's a challenge for him to learn the sport, which generates a lot of the movie's humor, but it's equally as challenging for her to learn about trust and humility and skating for the sake of enjoyment, not just to win. And yes, they go from not liking each other to falling in love. It's a romance that's not without its frustrations and disappointments, which I guess made it feel a little more mature than it might have been otherwise. I enjoyed this one, which is good because I'd been anticipating it for such a long time, and I do love to watch figure skating. Certainly there was a lot of body doubling for the main actors, but it's pretty seamless and convincing, especially thanks to some wicked early 90s editing tricks. And the last movie we saw in June was a 1977 film called March or Die. This one stars Gene Hackman as a major in the French Foreign Legion, just returned from the horrors of the trenches in World War I. These weary men are assigned to security detail for an archaeological dig in North Africa, protecting the excavation from hostile Arab tribes who don't want their land and artifacts disturbed. It's another film that asks the question, is the loss of human life worth the recovery of historical artifacts? A question I've mentioned before when I talked about The Monuments Men and The Train. Those movies, both dealing with art stolen by the Nazis, present both sides of the debate. This one seems to favor one side pretty clearly. Maybe I didn't thoroughly do my research before watching this one, because I was expecting an adventurous, escapist romp through the desert, and this was overall a dreary movie, far more grounded in realism, not without a little humor, but mostly depressing, especially the scenes involving the sad musician. Oof. So, like I said, it was kind of a want-want collection of movies, some ups, some downs. It happens. I hope you enjoyed the video anyway, and as always, let me know what you thought of any of the movies that I mentioned in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.